Hey haunties, welcome to this video and another movie haunt. And in this haunting video, I'm going to be ranking every movie from the Halloween franchise. It's going to be really exciting. It's the first countdown that we're going to be doing here on Movie Haunts. And of course, it's Halloween season. Now, in our house, Santo and I, we and celebrate Halloween 12 months a year. We love horror films. Horror films are the shit. They are what we get into and they are what we dig. And that is why we have dedicated this channel to that. So I'm so excited to get going with this countdown and in ranking of every movie in the Halloween franchise. All right, just a word on my rankings. The countdown is going to be in order from worst to best, of course, all in my opinion. Our opinions on movies and how we connect to movies, that's so individual and really is a subjective experience. So this countdown clearly only reflects my opinion, my thoughts on this franchise that I know and love so well. But I would love to hear how you would rank these movies in the comment section. Just let me know. And if you're a YouTuber and you've done a video ranking these, I would really love it if you would go ahead and give me your link in the comments. I'd love to check out your video as well. And I'll leave a little comment there so you know that I've been by to visit. And every movie that I do critique receives a skull rating from me from 1 to 5 skulls. 1 skull is as low as I go. I don't do any half skulls or 0 skulls. Everything above a 3 skull rating for me is recommended. Of course, the 4, 4.5, and 5 skull ratings, those are the ones that I highly recommend. 3, 3.5 are a little more tepid, but yet recommendations nonetheless. Now, in the Halloween franchise, little spoiler alert, the top 9 movies are all recommended. So this is a pretty decent franchise when only 4 of the 13 are non-recommendations, movies I would actually recommend that you avoid, unless, of course, you're binging the franchise like I just did recently to prepare this countdown. So these are all fresh views. These are all skull ratings based on my last view. So let's go ahead and begin. Here is the countdown from worst to best of every movie in the Halloween franchise. All right, starting at the bottom, and a movie that has always been my least favorite Halloween movie since it was released in 2002. And it tends to be, from the few videos I have seen, the few countdowns I've seen here on YouTube from fans, this tends to be the least favorite movie among fans by far over any of the other movies. So this is kind of a general consensus type opinion I feel here. Coming in 13th, the bottom of the franchise is Halloween Resurrection. And this movie is just as bad as what everybody says it is. I just watched, like I said, I watched all these movies. When I got to Halloween Resurrection, it actually took me 2 tries to make it through this movie. Now, the movie is barely 90 minutes. I think it actually even falls short of that, maybe even a little bit closer to 80 minutes, but it just drags. I really don't like cutting on performances, but Brad Lorry does just, he's one of the least memorable and just annoying Michael Myers performances throughout the franchise. He's probably my least favorite Michael Myers. And I'm not even going to really get into the Busta Rhymes showdown with Michael Myers, but it is as much of a joke as possible. And the thing that gets me about Halloween Resurrection is that it really did not have to be as bad as it is. Yes, some of the scenes are just far-fetched. Like I said, the Michael Myers performance was bad and Busta Rhymes is terribly miscast. But the story idea itself of a reality show based in the Michael Myers house in the early 2000s, that was kind of a topical type plot line to go with. It made sense. Those were kind of the rage on TV back then, but it was all in the execution. Yeah, we've had legacy characters killed off in movies. That is nothing new. Halloween Resurrection is perhaps my least favorite way of disposing of a legacy character. And then it just goes downhill from there. I really, really hate this movie. I hope I never have to rewatch it again. The memory of it this last time, I think, will stick with me for a very long time, so I won't have to. But Halloween Resurrection is very much a one skull rated movie. All right, as unbelievable as it may sound, coming in at number 12, just a smidgen better than Halloween Resurrection, is Halloween Kills from 2021, the middle chapter of the David Gordon Green trilogy. This movie, perhaps of any of the 13 movies that I rewatched, I may have had the worst reaction with this movie compared to what I had when I first saw it. This was my first time revisiting the trilogy, and I remember that Halloween Kills was a movie that I was never that fond of, especially following 2018's Halloween. But then Halloween Kills came out, and it was kind of a buzzkill. It just really, you had these legacy characters returning, most of them played by the original actors who played them back then. Anthony Michael Hall, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but he gives a terrible performance as Tommy Doyle. Maybe it was directed this way. Evil dies tonight. That whole thing happens throughout this movie. The whole villagers' unrest at the end. It is the worst of the trilogy. And in fact, Halloween Ends kind of shines in comparison, as you'll find out in my countdown. I really did not like my experience with Halloween Kills this time. Not a big fan of what David Gordon Green did with the trilogy, anyways. It really is a sad, sad movie. And I really did not enjoy it. I really did not enjoy the viewing experience this time. I think before it may have been a mild recommendation when I first saw it. Now it's a two skull rated movie. And like I said, just a smidgen better than Halloween Resurrection. And at number 11 is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. And I am starting to see a trend here in the bottom of the countdown of the disrespect that is shown to legacy characters kind of rides throughout all of these movies. And in this case, in Halloween 5, it's Rachel, one of the two survivors from Halloween 4, that is killed off within the first few minutes of the movie, which is bad enough. But then who she is replaced with is Tina, played by Wendy Kaplan, which, oh my god, this character is so insufferable. And I don't know. I'm assuming she was directed and told to overact every single scene, but it just becomes almost a slapstick type movie, where Michael Myers actually almost becomes a punchline. And it's just, the longer I go and the more I have seen of this movie, and I have seen Halloween 5 a few times now, I like it less and less with each view. And it practically, if Halloween Resurrection and Halloween Kills weren't such miserable viewing experiences, this one very easily, in a lot of countdowns and rankings, could have ended up as the worst movie. And if it is your worst, your least favorite Halloween movie, I wouldn't blame you. This movie's really bad. Once again, it ranks the same as Halloween Kills with a two skull rating. So it's definitely a movie I would not recommend. Okay, the last of the movies that I do not recommend comes in at number 10, and that is the closing chapter of the David Gordon Green trilogy, Halloween Ends. And Halloween Ends is a very complicated movie. It's actually an installment where they tried to do something different. He tried to change the equation a little bit and yet didn't go all the way with it. And that to me was the biggest fault. We had it set up where Michael Myers, like it has been done with other franchises and even other installments here in the Halloween franchise, where the movie was not centered around Michael Myers. And that was a very daring attempt for Halloween Ends. And it looked like that's where he was going to go with it by giving us another killer other than Michael Myers. But then it kind of goes off in the third act. It just goes off where it almost, I don't know if it was studio interference or if he just painted himself into a corner, didn't really know how he was going to finish it. But it just ends in a very anticlimactic fashion, which really left kind of a bad taste in my mouth, especially the final showdown. And I'm using air quotes for a reason because it really wasn't much of one. But the final showdown between Laurie and Michael. It is 2.5 skull rated. It's not the worst watch of the Halloween franchise. That is definitely Halloween Resurrection, but it's not a very pleasant watch either. It's a very anticlimactic way to end the franchise. All right, In at Number 9 is a movie that I have seen a few times now, and whether or not I like it really depends on just the day. My views on this movie have gone up, down, and all over the place. And I am talking about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 from 2009, the follow up to his remake that he did in 2007, which I'll be talking about here in a few minutes. Halloween 2 is a very different kind of movie. I know that there are people that watch Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, absolutely hate the movie, absolutely hate everything about it, right down to the white horse. And I can't disagree with that. But there is also quite a bit that I like about Halloween 2. I think it is more cohesive as a movie than Halloween. I also fucking love Tyler Mane as Michael Myers. I think he gives the best performance of Michael Myers, hands down. Danielle Harris returns. She's amazing. However, I cannot say the same, and I don't know why it was this time, but Scout Taylor Compton's performance in Halloween 2 was just annoying. Like, she was such an annoying character. And I'm assuming that her performance was as directed by Rob. And I don't really understand it. She was so whiny and so irritating. And she's just such a twat. And so I'm like, I don't know. I just, not my favorite performance of Laurie Strode by far in any of the movies. I thought she was actually better in Halloween. Now, I will say this last watch, by the way, I watched the director's cut, and I'm not sure. I believe I may like the theatrical cut of Halloween 2 a little bit better. The ending is different. And if you've ever seen both cuts of the movie, the theatrical and the director's, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen the director's ending, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but to say that it is a lot darker than the original ending. And in this case, and maybe it's because it's Laurie Strode, just such a classic character in horror films, that I just kind of preferred the original ending. So my response is to the director's cut of Halloween 2. That is the one that is being placed in this countdown. Perhaps if I do this again or do a tier ranking, even maybe I'll do it for the theatrical cut and see if it is any different. However, even the director's cut is a movie that I would still recommend. I give it 3 skulls. It's a movie that I think is definitely worth a watch. All right, at number 8 is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. This is a movie that I actually enjoyed more this time watching it than any time before. But here's the caveat to that. This time viewing, I actually watched, I believe it's the producer's cut. It's either the director's cut or the producer's cut, but I believe it's producers. And come to find out, I really enjoyed that version a lot more. This movie made a lot more sense with that version. I wish that was the version that they would have released in theaters. But the powers that be decided that this was not the version that would sell. And they may have been wrong. We'll never know. Halloween 6 did not light up the box office when it was released with the version they thought would sell. We'll never know whether or not this producer's cut would have actually kept the franchise going in a positive direction. So Halloween 6 is the closing of the Jamie Lloyd trilogy. Once again, this is another case where the legacy character, in this case, Jamie Lloyd, is killed off within the first few minutes of the movie. Sorry, spoiler alert, that's a little late. In the rest of the movie, we're given the cult of Thorn. Brings me back to Damien Thorn of the Omen movies. That's what I always think of, but it is the cult of Thorn in The Curse of Michael Myers, which is really the cult that sort of worships Michael, where he is more of a god-like character. It's a movie that also brings back the character of Tommy Doyle, played by Paul Rudd, a very young Paul Rudd. I believe this, if not his first movie, was definitely one of his first movies. And it's actually a pretty decent movie. If you could get your hands on the producer's cut, it's definitely the cut of the movie I would recommend. I don't know if I would actually recommend the theatrical cut, because this is a movie that, had I watched the theatrical cut, my memory of it anyways, would have ended up lower on my list and would have been under the 3 skull rating that I'm actually going to give it. All right, coming in at number 7, that's where I have put Rob Zombie's 2007's remake of Halloween, giving it a 3.5-star rating. This has always been a very complicated movie for me because, as I said before, I think Tyler Mane turns in hands down the best performance as Michael Myers, and there's quite a bit I do like about this movie. Rob Zombie's a very complicated individual. He's one of those people that loves to write and direct his own movies, so everything that you see on screen is his image, only his image, and he doesn't seem to get a whole lot of input from anybody else. And I think that might be one of his biggest downfalls, and it is very prevalent in Halloween, I believe. You have Rob Zombie, the director, and you have Rob Zombie, the writer. Rob Zombie, the director, I believe, is a very proficient director. He has an eye, a visual eye that every director needs. However, Rob Zombie, the writer, is another story altogether. I do find that his writing is kind of sus, and I don't know how other way to put it. Every character in Halloween is given the exact same dialogue to say, and then directed, I believe, to deliver that dialogue in the exact same manner. So there is no real character differentiation in this movie. The Laurie Strode character is actually meant to be different than her friends, to have a different personality, and it doesn't come off that way. It's a very different watch, of course, than the John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween, but it's not altogether bad. It's a movie that over the years I have grown to appreciate more. When I first saw it, I wasn't a real big fan of it. In fact, when I first saw the Rob Zombie Halloweens, both in the theater, I actually ended up liking Halloween 2 more than I liked Halloween. That used to be considered a hot take, but now I've actually heard some other people here on YouTube say the exact same thing and echo that they're actually more fond of Halloween 2. Now, on this last watch, I will say I found his Halloween 1, the first from 2007, to be a lot more bearable than Halloween 2 and a lot more of an entertaining watch. The other thing is, and I mentioned this in my Halloween 2 assessment before, Scout Taylor Compton's performance in Halloween, I think, is a lot more even keel. So Rob Zombie's Halloween from 2007 gets a 3.5 skull rating and comes in at number 7 on my countdown. Do you yearn for a life that's free from anxiety and stress? An enriching life where you are in total control of your emotions, thoughts, and actions? Self-control that allows you to make only the best choices for you while acting in complete confidence that your actions will yield the most positive of results. Well, if this sounds like you and you're ready to get your spiritual life in order, I'd encourage you to schedule a victory session with me. My victory sessions combine ancient spiritual teachings along with the science of numerology. Interpreting your unique numerical makeup will allow me to teach you how to use these teachings and implement them into your life according to your unique purpose and spiritual personality, producing incredible results while moving you forward in your spiritual path. To take your next step forward, all you have to do is reach out to me and schedule your very own victory session. Contact me today at the link in the description or comment section, and I look forward to hearing from you. And then at number 6 is Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers. And by the way, this is when the movies actually start turning really good. So these top 6 movies are all highly recommended movies. The Return of Michael Myers gets a 4 skull rating from me. This is a really good movie. At a point in the franchise, by the way, when Season of the Witch had come out and gone, I think we all kind of assumed that the Halloween franchise was dead. So when Halloween 4 was announced in production in the late 80s, man, we were all geeked about it. And then what we got was a really strong Michael Myers movie. A genius way to bring him back. Kept the Donald Pleasance character of Dr. Loomis. He came back. Awesome. We get a new character because Jamie Lee Curtis was no longer with the franchise. I think at this point she had kind of sworn off horror films and this whole Scream Queen image. So we get a new character, Jamie Lloyd, played by Danielle Harris. A very young Danielle Harris does an amazing job in this movie. Pretty much carries the movie, of course, with her older foster sister, Rachel Carruthers, who is played by Ellie Cornell, who was absolutely adorable. I absolutely loved her. She was a great final girl. Her and Danielle had some amazing chemistry. And although The Mask was terrible, George Wilbur turns in a really good performance. He makes a really good Michael Myers. Very reminiscent of the Michael Myers that we got back in Halloween 1 and 2. So he does a decent job. The Mask, like I said, is absolutely terrible. Some of the scripting is pretty bad. There's a couple of performances, but you know what? It is a slasher movie. It's part 4. The critics tore this one apart. I remember seeing this in the theater. I was absolutely amazed at how much I like this movie. And upon the recent watch, by the way, I still really enjoy this installment. It's not one of the highest rated Halloween movies, but it's definitely worth a watch. Right at number 5 is Halloween H2O 20 years later. The return of Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis making her big return to the Halloween franchise 20 years after the original. In this timeline, the timeline leading up to Halloween H2O, Laurie Strode is still alive. There was no car crash. And she does not have a daughter that's been adopted out, but she does have a son played by Josh Hartnett. And in this version, Laurie Strode kind of goes into hiding from Michael Myers, believing that he's still out there. And of course, he still is out there. I thought this was a really awesome movie, honestly, especially given what they had to work with. There are so many ways that this movie could have sucked. It did not. It is directed by Steve Miner, one of my favorite 80s slasher movie directors. He also directed Friday the 13th Part 2, one of the stronger sequels in that franchise as well. And I think he did it again with Halloween H2O. This one offers a bit of nostalgia while bringing it into that late 90s, heading into the 2000s feel that the movies had back then. You know, remember Scream had just come out a couple years earlier. So all the movies were kind of getting that Scream aesthetic. And Halloween H2O indeed does have that, but there's enough of that nostalgia factor built in as well. Jamie Lee Curtis seems to have enjoyed doing this movie. At least that comes out in her performance. But you also have Adam Arkin, you have Michelle Williams, you have Joseph Gordon-Levitt, you have Janet Leigh in a movie with her daughter for the first time since The Fog in 1980. What a remarkable sight that was to see her in this. Of course, being a huge Psycho fan, Janet Leigh is almost like the original Scream Queen, right? But yeah, Halloween H2O, definitely worth a watch. It gets a 4 skull rating for me and is number 5 in my countdown. Then at number 4, we have David Gordon Green's 2018 sequel. I guess we'll call it a sequel, but it's called Halloween. So Halloween is the sequel to Halloween, the first of the trilogy, by far the best of the trilogy. This is the movie that had my hopes high that this trilogy was going to knock it out of the park. I was really hoping, and 2018's Halloween was a really good movie. Not a big fan of the ending. I thought it was kind of derivative of other Halloween movies that we've seen and not very inspiring at that. However, leading up to that ending, I thought the character development was awesome. The dialogue was sharp. I thought Jamie Lee Curtis turned in a brilliant performance as Laurie Strode, who is a bit different than the Halloween H2O Laurie Strode. This Laurie Strode is not in her shell at all. She is out to fight for everything, fight for her family against this monster that has been haunting her for 40 fucking years. And yet the battle ensues. This movie is really, really good. This movie shows that David Gordon Green does have skill. So, Halloween 2018 was a really strong movie, and I definitely recommend it. 4 skull rating and 4th place in my countdown. All right, at number 3, a movie that may raise some eyebrows as far as how high it is in my countdown, and that would be 1981's Halloween 2. But anyways, the critics tore it apart, but the box office obviously did not suffer. The movie became a huge financial success and has always been one of my favorites. When I watch it, I do realize what everybody has or what the people who don't like it have an issue with. I get it. I understand it. I guess if I were to put on a film critic's hat that works for the Chicago Sun-Times or the New York Times or one of the major newspapers in the country, then I guess I would probably be able to look at it in their way. But you know what? As a horror film fan, this has always been one of my favorites. It does exactly what a sequel should do. It takes what the original did and it makes it even bigger. Now, I know John Carpenter has had issues with the Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode sister storyline. That was not something that he had ever intended on doing. And it does seem to come out of left field, even in this movie. It is this sister route that was continued in part 4, 5, and 6. When I am in the mood for a Halloween, Michael Myers Halloween movie, I tend to look to Halloween 2. That's why it's rated so high in my countdown. At number 3, it's a 4.5 skull rated movie. All right, in at number 2 is a movie that received very little, if any, respect when it was released back in 1983. And it's a movie that also has really gotten quite a bit of a cult following, as well as earned quite a bit of respect, real respect, as being a decent movie. And that is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. It is a movie without Michael Myers. If you are familiar with the Halloween franchise, I'm sure you know. They decided after Halloween 2 that the best answer was to get rid of the Michael Myers character, that he had died in the hospital. We're not going to keep bringing this guy back, but we don't want to lose this franchise that has made money. That's the way the studio was looking at it. And so they decided to go ahead with a Halloween 3, but instead of continuing the story of Michael Myers, their idea was we'll do it almost like an anthology of movies. So Halloween becomes kind of the holiday backdrop for these movies, and then we'll have different stories, different characters in each movie. Well, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch was released, and the critics were so on it, but the audiences were a little bit taken aback because, us in the 80s, we were ready for another Michael Myers movie, and then Halloween 3 comes out, doesn't even have Michael Myers in it, doesn't really even need the Halloween tag on it or the Michael Myers backdrop character. This is a movie that could have been released as Season of the Witch and would have been just fine. And I don't know if that would have made it any more of a financial success. Perhaps its legacy is better suited by being the third Halloween movie and kind of the runt of the litter that just is off. Every one of these franchises has that movie that tries to do something different in a drastic way. And that was Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And it does pay off. The story about an evil mask maker who's created these masks to kill the entire world's population of children who seemingly are all going to be wearing these masks as opposed to any other mask on Halloween. They're going to all choose one of these three masks. But the masks are cool, and the movie is, and the effects are. The music's great. I love Season of the Witch. I loved it when I first saw it back in the 80s, and I love it just as much today. I think this is a movie that's always been underappreciated, but is now starting to find the appreciation, especially here on YouTube. And so I really do dig this movie. It gets a 4.5 skull rating from me. John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978 is the best Halloween movie in the franchise, in my opinion. However, it does only receive, and I say only because I think this would be lower than what a lot of people would rate it, but I rate it a 4.5 skull rating, and let me explain why I do not think John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978 is a perfect movie. I love it. It's a classic in every way, and I would never take anything from that. I don't think the movie has aged all that well, and I'll say it. And I grew up with this movie. It's one of the first slasher movies that I ever saw uncut, but it is a movie that I think is very basic. It's basic in the way that the original Friday the 13th is basic. There isn't much of a plot to it, and the body count isn't that high to keep it interesting. It's a movie that I do really enjoy. I still watch it every Halloween, even if I don't rewatch all of the Halloween movies every Halloween, which I don't. There are certain ones that I will watch every year. This Halloween is one of them. The other thing is that even among John Carpenter's movies, Halloween may not even be in my top 3 of John Carpenter movies. I love The Thing. The Thing is my favorite John Carpenter movie. I think that's much more of a classic than even Halloween, and especially the way that it is viewed today and just the retro reviews that we've had on it. It has really gone from a cult classic to a classic classic. I love They Live, In the Mouth of Madness. These are all movies that I generally will watch before I watch Halloween. When I'm in the mood for a John Carpenter movie, I'm usually going for one of those 3 movies, and Halloween might be 4th or 5th on the list. To me, that's not a 5 skull rated movie. However, having said that, I still do believe that the 1978 original is the best Halloween movie, and that's why it's at the top of the charts. Well, guys, that's it for this countdown of all the movies in the Halloween franchise. This has been a load of fun. I appreciate you being here with me. And if you enjoyed this video, and I'm assuming you did if you're still here, I would ask that you subscribe to our channel as well as like and share this video. Also, let me know what you think of my countdown. Where would your rankings be? What would your rankings look like? let me know in the comments section as well. And of course, if you'd like to support us as well as earn tons of rewards, we'd love to have you over there on Patreon with us. You will get a ton of rewards. And right now, regardless of what tier you go with, you will receive a 7-day free trial. So you are able to check out all the rewards, or at least most of them, absolutely risk free. Thank you so much, guys, for checking out this video once again. I really do appreciate it. And I will see you next time.